The diner fell silent the moment the slap echoed across the room. Forks stopped mid-air. Coffee cups froze halfway to lips, and the neon sign outside flickered against the window like a warning light. 81-year-old Frank Harris sat stunned, one hand on his cheek, his wrinkled fingers trembling. The man standing over him, young, broad, and angry, smirked as if proud of what he'd done. No one moved, no one breathed. It was a small-town diner on a Wednesday afternoon, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, but no one had ever seen anything like this. Frank had been a regular at Millie's diner for years. Every morning he sat in the same corner booth, ordered black coffee and 2 scrambled eggs, and talked with whoever wanted to listen. He was a Korean War veteran, the kind of man who carried his memories quietly. He had that calm, unshakable dignity that only comes from seeing the worst of life and choosing kindness anyway. That afternoon, Frank had noticed the young man about 30, scruffy, tattoos creeping up his neck, yelling at the waitress. She was new, barely 20, and she'd mixed up his order. When Frank politely asked the man to calm down, the thug turned on him, eyes burning with rage. "You don't tell me what to do, old man," he sneered. Frank didn't back down. "Son, respect is free. You might want to try it." The slap came fast, hard, cruel. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. The waitress gasped. Millie, the owner, froze behind the counter, and for a long moment no one dared to speak. Then the door opened, the bell above it jingled, and in walked a man in a leather vest embroidered, with flaming skulls and the unmistakable patch of the Hells Angels. Behind him came 5 more bikers, their boots heavy on the tile floor. The diner suddenly felt too small for the storm that had just entered. The man in front, broad shoulders, grey in his beard, eyes cold and calculating, stopped dead when he saw Frank. His gaze flicked from his father's cheek to the thug still standing there, his smirk faltering as he realized what was happening. "Dad," the biker said quietly. Frank's eyes softened. "Hey, Tommy." The thug's face drained of color. Tommy Harris had been a member of the Hells Angels for 20 years. He wasn't a saint, but he lived by a code: loyalty, respect, and family above all. He'd spent his younger years rebelling against his father's discipline, but over time he came to understand that the old man's values, honor, courage, decency, were the same principles that kept his club alive. Tommy walked over to his father, gently touching the red mark on his cheek. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. The thug tried to speak, but words tangled in his throat. One of the bikers, a mountain of a man with a scar down his jaw, pointed at him. "That one." Tommy turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "You hit my father?" The thug backed up until his shoulders hit the counter. "Hey man, I didn't know who he was." He was mouthing off. Tommy's voice dropped lower, almost a growl. "That old man fought for this country before your daddy even learned to walk. He's the reason you can stand there flapping your mouth without fear." For a long moment no one spoke. The air in the diner felt thick enough to cut. Frank put a hand on his son's arm. "Tommy," he said quietly, "let it go." Tommy looked at him, stunned. "Let it go. He hit you, Dad." "I've taken worse hits from men twice his size for reasons that mattered," Frank said, his voice steady. This isn't worth your soul." The room was silent except for the hum of the old refrigerator. The thug stood frozen, eyes darting between the old man and the biker son. Frank slowly turned to face his attacker. "Son," he said softly, "you ever served anyone but yourself?" The man didn't answer. "You look angry," Frank continued. "I get that. Life's unfair. But hurting people who've done nothing to you, that's the easy path. The hard one is fixing yourself." The thug's jaw worked as he tried to find words, but nothing came. His bravado was gone. Tommy's crew watched quietly, waiting for a signal. Instead, Tommy stepped back, respecting his father's wish. The old veteran stood up slowly but with dignity and walked toward the thug. "You've got 2 choices right now," he said. "You can keep being the man who hits old people, or you can decide to be better than you were 5 minutes ago." The thug swallowed hard. Something in Frank's steady gaze broke through the armor of his pride. "I'm sorry," he muttered. Frank nodded. "Good start." Tommy watched the scene, his anger fading into admiration. His father had always been stronger than anyone he knew, not in muscle but in spirit. As the thug left the diner, the tension lifted. Millie brought over a fresh cup of coffee, hands shaking slightly. "You okay, Frank?" He smiled faintly. "I'll live, always do." Tommy sat across from his father, his expression softening. "You really would have let me tear that guy apart, wouldn't you?" Frank chuckled. "You, Maybe when you were 20. Now, you've got more to lose." The bikers laughed quietly. The old man still had command of the room. For the next hour, father and son talked for the first time in years. About life, regrets, the things that mattered. Tommy told him how the club had started a veterans charity ride, raising money for soldiers with PTSD. Frank's eyes misted over with pride. Before leaving, Tommy leaned down and hugged his father. "You're still the toughest man I know," he said. Frank smiled. "Nah, just the most stubborn." As the rumble of Harley engines faded into the distance, the diner returned to its quiet rhythm. But the story of that day, of an old veteran's calm strength, a son's fierce loyalty, and the choice to answer hate with dignity, would spread through the town like wildfire. Weeks later, the same thug returned to Millie's diner. This time he didn't yell. He ordered coffee, left a big tip, and quietly asked if the old man still came in. When Millie said yes, he nodded. "Tell him," the man said, "I'm trying to be better." And for Frank Harris, that was victory enough. Moral of the story: true strength isn't measured by how hard you can hit, but by how much compassion you can show when you have every reason not to.